Good morning, Milan. Sorry I can't be with you today on what looks like it's going to become another inspiring day of philosophy talks. But nevertheless, I'm very grateful to be able to share with you some thoughts on storytelling and design for social innovation through this small video. Now, what I'd like to do is actually share with you a few insights, a few of the many insights that we've gained at Pantopic on working with stories as instruments to enable others to explore their future and envision it. And I'd like to touch upon three things. I'd like to highlight three ways in which stories can be considered tools. On the one hand, they're tools to establish a common ground for discussion. Secondly, they're tools in order to gain insight into people's perspectives. And last but not least, they're tools to engage or to move people. Now, as for the first one, I'm reminded of Herbert Simon, who described design as a course of action to move from an existing situation to a preferred one. By juxtaposing the existing situation or the world as it is with the world that could be, he actually opens up an interesting framework. Especially when we think of the way that stories could play a role in bridging those two worlds. Stories actually allow us to and allow people to render tangible how they experience one and how they would like to experience the other. And by rendering tangible, it also gives us insight, not only into their hopes and fears, but also allows us to establish a sense of distance between those two worlds, what is and what could be. Now, as I mentioned, stories can also be considered a tool in order to gain insight into people's perspective, their take on things. And as such, they enable us to establish a more kaleidoscopic view, if you wish, of not only reality as it is, but the way the situation in the future could be. And if there's one thing that social innovation is about, it's actually about establishing pathways of change that actually link up the one with the other. Now, that brings us to my third point, stories as a way to engage people. We've come to realize that, as many, that stories are only as good as the room they leave for others to use their imagination. Stories that are too refined, too polished, in which there's too much detail, they actually close the door. They're no longer an invitation for people to use their own imagination, to engage with the story in order to position themselves and to actually plot their way, their course of action. So as you're in a phase in which you're actually still exploring alternatives of how to go from the present to the future, you would actually want to leave that door open, to actually want to invite people in order to join efforts in establishing, in realizing in that new vision. On a closing note, I'd like to remind you of something that the great Russian writer Nabokov once said, is that in order to be a writer, you need to be three things. You need to be a storyteller, a teacher, and an enchanter. And it's actually the enchanter which is the most important one. The extent to which you succeed in enchanting people actually makes you a better storyteller and a better teacher. And with that, I'd like to wish you an enchanting day in Milan of inspiring DESIS philosophy talks. Bye-bye.